So this morning, Lynn and I, in our presentation, we're going to showcase how we've been using the Socrative software or platform to build student engagement when we're teaching online in a synchronous classroom environment. So as we've all experienced over the past 18 months, for many of us, we've had to transition our teaching from face-to-face classroom into an online environment. And Lynn and I very consciously took the decision to take our class into a synchronous environment. So we resisted the urge to move particularly lectures into an asynchronous. There's a lot of pressure for us to move our lectures or our large classes into an asynchronous environment. But we also were getting plenty of feedback that students were feeling dislocated, disengaged from their studies. They were lacking that sense of connection with their studies and with their cohort. So we very much took a deliberate strategy of resisting that urge to go asynchronous, and we continued to teach our large classes synchronously, and we're talking about classes of about 175 students as a large class. The classes run for 2 hours at a time, but I'm sure when you have been teaching synchronously over, either over the last 18 months or you may have had a long history of teaching in online programs, you often get that, we would often face that, oh my God, people won't have their cameras on, and that could be for a variety of reasons, right? So it might be a technology issue, it might be a bandwidth issue, and people feel, teachers that we would speak to would feel, they would feel confronted by that blank wall of, just black screens with names on them. And also questioning, well, are students actually engaged? They're probably off watching a video. They've probably signed into class, but they're not following with us, type of thing. So Lynn and I were very conscious of that. And we had students in this program from all around the globe. They were studying at all hours of the day or night, but they were logging into our classes. So what we were looking to do was to find ways to make sure that students were keeping up with us, were engaging in our materials and our classes without that need to have cameras on for us to be checking that a student was actually participating, they weren't asleep, they weren't doing something else at the same time. So one of the ways we've been doing that is through the use of Socrative. So what we're going to do today is we're going to get you to participate and to use Socrative as a student, so as we would do in a classroom. And then we're going to sort of go behind the scenes, and Lynn's going to spend a lot of time explaining both and showing you both what you would see as an educator, and then we will talk about how we use the data that it produces, not only real time, but how we then make use of the fact that it records data so that we can maintain engagement with students after the class time. So once class finishes each week. So Lynn, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm handing it over to you.
Oh, you can keep sharing for a minute. Oh, okay. All right. So that's okay, because we're going to give them, they can see the link as well as I'll put it in.
Oh, that's right.
What we're going to do is Janis is going to share the screen so you can see the link. I'm going to put a link in the chat box. So this is what's going to actually happen. And this is exactly what we do with our classes, because we take a learning together mode. And what we're going to do is show you, as Janis said, how the students experience it. And then I'm going to take you behind the scenes and you'll get to see firsthand what we're actually working with. So what you need to do is you can use the link that you can see on the screen there. I'm going to put it also in the chat box. This is our own classroom. So the only people that are going into this link are yourselves. ourselves. And once you get into that link, what you'll see is that I have started for you a, oh, don't you love it when your screen goes slow? I have started a quiz. Now the quiz, I'll be able to see you logging on. I can see that there's already, let's see. Yep. Okay. We've got most of you already logged on. So fantastic. So we're expecting about 15 to log in. We've got about 13 of you logged in. I can see that. You can see the question that I'm asking you, which is, how does everybody feel today? So this is not a long question. This is not a huge thing to do. Just give us a word, give us a first thought, and you're going to experience exactly how we're doing it. So what I can see already is that a number of you are saying things like excited, tense, tired, right? Interested. And so in a classroom, what I'm able to see is it's great to see that, you know, so many people are feeling excited and happy. And I think that there's a few of us, me included, that are feeling busy. And if you're tired, don't forget you can bring your cup of tea or coffee to the class. I'm glad to see that people are interested, and we're going to be spending a bit of time today to explore that interest as well. Just got a few people that need to answer. We'll just wait for the last one to do that. Now, again, you'll see that I'm actually being really specific about who we're waiting for and why. But given, in the interest of time, we also use a thing called popcorn, which Janis will talk about in a little while as well. So now we've got the answers that we need. And it's interesting, I'm seeing a couple of people might be a bit worried. So later, if this was a class, we would actually share resources with you, things like our psychological services, support services, student hubs, so that the students actually know how they can be supported. And we're going to move on to the next question, which was, if you would like to learn anything today, what would you like to learn about? So understand this is a bit bigger question, but again, don't overthink it. If you are thinking about the challenges you have in your class, things like sometimes my students don't turn their cameras on, or I don't know if they're really listening, or I don't know if they really understand. Are they just going along with the crowd? And so what I'm seeing is people are sort of saying there's a lot about synchronous tools, things like how to best facilitate. We're going to cover things like that. How do we keep people engaged? How do we do creativity? I love the creativity questions. Janis knows, don't give me 5 minutes or I'll go and do something creative. But what we're really going to do today is explore how this tool works. And I think that there's a question here about how does it differ from Kahoot? And what I like about this is that you can hear there's no music. If I want to play music, I get to choose the music. If I want to do something, I'm in complete control of this particular platform. So Janis, I'm going to ask that you stop sharing for a minute so that I can share. Now, I know that what you're all seeing now on your Socrative screen is waiting for me to give you the next question, but I'm actually going to do something with everybody's inherent permission, because you know it's being recorded. I'm going to share my screen so that you can actually see what I see and what I'm working off. So let me just share that. So you should all now be able to see the Socrative screen. And what you can see is I've actually opened the names, and it tells me exactly what each person has asked. And that's what I was talking to as you were answering. Now, as Janis said, we have about 175 students turn up. So I usually have about 145 to 155 logged on at any one time. And this reads like a really big scroll. So it tells me, first of all, how quickly they're answering. It's been very kind. Some of you have put in your whole names, but our students will give us just their first name. What I'm able to do is use it nearly as a thematic analysis as they're answering. So I can see here all of your questions, all of your answers. Now you'll see here it tells me that 17 of 17 students answered. And I'm just going to move everybody's screens, because you'll also see that at the very top it tells me how many people are logged on. It shows me that this is in our own room, MOBTSV. And I can finish this now, or I can take you to the next question. Just checking the chat box. So can we share the interface with students in real time? Absolutely. What I did then was just shared with you a room in real time. You can use a free version of this program. I'm using a paid version at about $100 US a year. And that gives me as many rooms, as much data as I want. And what it really gives me is this great ability. If I'd have had your names today, I wouldn't have to share a link. I could just share the room name and say, you're just going to MOBTSV, log on to Socrative, MOBTSV, and your name will already be there. And so it inherently takes a role if I want it to as well. Now, the other great thing about this is that while you all chose to answer, when I do download the data, if you didn't answer, it will tell me, sorry, Bronte, I'm going to use your name because we've worked with Bronte before and Bronte won't feel that we're soloing her out.
No, it's fine.
Sorry, Bronte, that's just the gig, isn't it? It's just Australians talking to Australians. But so if Bronte, for example, is logged on but not answered, all of a sudden I can use that to either reach out later and say to Bronte, was there a problem with the platform? Or I can sort of go the next week, I can make sure that there's time for Bronte to answer, or Bronte might follow up if she's a very diligent student and say, I didn't get the chance to answer. And I can go back and say, great. And then next week I'll say, so Bronte, when you've polled, can you come back to the classroom that we're in and send me a popcorn or an emoji to tell me that it's all good? It gives her some ownership, some agency, but it also means that if she is, for whatever reason, lost, she's not lost in the crowd. So Clive, I don't use poll everywhere because what I like about Socrative is that it gives me a choice of polls, multi-choices, short answers, these longer answers. And the other thing is I can build it in real time. It is free for educators, Veronica, but only to a certain level. But the students never have to pay. So as I said, I spent $99 US, and that gives me an unlimited license, and I can download my data, even if I've changed the rooms, deleted rooms, etc., from there. So that is one of its sort of, you know, what I'd call sweet spot moments in terms of using this particular program. One of the things that we use this particular program from, and I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. Oh, sorry. Yes.
A couple of questions. When you hit hide answers or hide names, is it a permanent? Is it temporary?
No, I can toggle back and forward.
Oh, okay. And then why do we have 16 logged in but 17 answering?
Probably because Janis has come through my login, I would think.
Yes.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
So
sorry for the weird question.
No. They're great questions. And the thing is that, you know, like all programs, this, and, you know, I've sat through quite a few program presentations over the evening, and I think that, you know, technology is only the answer to how you want to teach. So I never, ever put the technological cart before the pedagogical horse. So always I start with how I would like to teach. And then I come back to how can I use a piece of software to do that? So Min's asked, are there any specific platform requirements? Absolutely not. You can use it from your phone. You can use it from an iPad or any type of tablet. I'm working on a Mac. I know Janis is on a Surface Pro. Is that, I forgot that right, Janis? You change software, yeah. You change the hardware so often. So that what it allows is this really ambidextrous approach, and we don't have to then worry about what the student's tech is. And I think that's really important because, as Janis mentioned, our students are all over the world. They have different capacity, both in terms of access to technology, but also access to bandwidth. And so what we are constantly doing is looking for something that is not bandwidth hungry. So I do have to fess up. I come from a telco background, so I do understand those technology limitations. And you being able to use it on any platform through any device means that every student can join in. So you don't, with Mentimeter, you're saying, can we get a word cloud? Absolutely. We're going to show you that we created some word clouds. What this specific platform does that I think is my favorite thing about it, so I think you've got to have a favorite thing with any piece of tech you use, is that I can use it live, but after class is finished, I can go in and download the Excel spreadsheet, and and if I forget or I'm busy, I can get that Excel spreadsheet anytime in the future for the rest of, time, by just going back and saying, what date did I run it? And it will give me by date and time. So even if I'm running 5 different classes that day, probably not 5, but 3, I'll go, it was the morning class, it was the afternoon class, it was the evening class. And again, it allows me to then compare across classes. No, that's also for the free platform, Lynn. So regardless, you can do that. The difference is that with the paid platform, what I can get is I can enroll more people. So because we have these large classes, I can enroll up to 200 students on a paid version. If I was working on a non-paid version, I could only put in, I want to say it's 99, but don't quote me on that. You've got a question.
Hi.
Yeah.
I just have a question. Like, I teach one class, but I have like 4 different sections of the class. And each section has, let's say, 40 students in the class. So I can create, so I'm looking at the Socrative website. So I can create multiple, like a private rooms or public rooms if I have same content, which I can share with everybody, or if I have different content for
Yes.
class.
Yes. So we would normally have 3 different sections to the one course each week. So we would be running 3 lots of 175 students per week. And so we would set up individual sections for each of those classes with, the same questions, things like that. Yep.
Thank you.
Or if I want to, I can use the same classroom and I can just close it and then reopen it for the next class, because the data will save per time and class. So it's up to me whether I have multiple classrooms or one. So I teach, Janis and I teach on a number of different courses. So I probably, some terms I'll have them set up by class. Some terms, if I'm going to do a lot more, and one of the things I like about Socrative is that I can be prepared, or I can just be teaching a class and go, I'm not sure that we're all there, or I'm not sure where the sentiment of the class is. I'm just going to go in and say, I want to go to that class, share the link. I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute. And I can put up something instantly.
Yeah.
So it allows to do both.
I think that's one of the real benefits. So, for example, I'm sure as we've all been teaching online, we've probably run, an instantaneous poll, a quick, multiple choice or a quick Q&A in, say, in Zoom or Teams or, whatever the platform is. But one of the real, what I personally like about Socrative is that as I'm preparing for my class each week, I can preload, I'm going to ask them this question and this question and this question. And so I've effectively set up those questions before the class starts. But once we're in the classroom and I've got the platform running, as Lynn said, if I then wanted to run a quick poll as well, I could also do that as well. And all of that data is then saved that we can then use afterwards as well. Sorry, Lynn, I jumped in there.
Not at all. I'm busy answering the chat box, which is exactly how I teach as well. And Janis knows
Yes,
that.
that's right.
So we're teaching in Blackboard, but I've used it also on Teams, and you can see we're using it on Zoom today. That's, again, the great thing. It's agnostic. No matter what you're using to teach on, it's just a simple case of sharing that link. So I'm going to go back for a moment and just show you back end, right? Because you've now used it front end. So I just want to share with you the screen again and show you this back end of, it's important I share the right screen. So you can see that I'm in MOBTSB. What I've got here is a number of rooms. Now, as soon as I tell it I'm going to change, I go back to rooms, it's not going to be overly happy with me. But so you can see I've got these many, many rooms, and this little share link is, as the highlighted thing says, I'm in my room. This little shared link, I click on it and it gives me that straight away. And I can just copy it and put it in. So, which I've already done today. I'm not going to change rooms. We're already in a quiz, but I can, if I tell it, now I'm going to close that quiz, right? So we don't lose that data, but you're going to actually get to see what we do. So I just go launch a quiz. It says, do I want to stop the current activity and start a new one? For the purposes of this, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to go back to what we had, which is MOBTSB. Next, I want it teacher paced and require names. Now I use these two settings for two reasons. The first one is that I want to control how long the students stay in an area. And because we do this learning with process, it means I can, if the kids and the students and the people who get there really quickly, they're not going to be finished and going, what do I now do? Instead, if they've logged on and answered, I say to them, help your peers to log on. So we get everybody involved in this community of learning, community of teaching process. And so by doing this, it then allows me to say start, and it starts the activity. You'll see it come up again. Exactly what you've just done. All I do is say, show me the answers and show me the names, right? But we've already answered this. Because we have answered these two, I can drive through to our poll, which is, I just again preloaded it. And this is important because we really use this very student-centered language when we're using polls or we're using Socrative. So we don't use the polls just for the purpose of knowledge. We might use a poll for how they're feeling in general, but we use these words like, I get it, I think I'm okay, I'm lost. There's a couple of you who have answered, so I will get you to answer because I can see everybody's still logged on. Yay. Now again, I can see as we're moving on that the class is on board. How I use this data is not only that I can see that people have got it, but if somebody is lost, I'll say, now I can see, even if there's one, I can see there's a few people who aren't quite sure. Can you pop back into the chat box and give me some more detail about that? Or I'll start to go back over the concept or go back over what I think might have been the sticking point and watch that worm move. So I teach to this like a worm, right? Rather than teaching to it as a pure data, the data points I've got after, as we've said, come back and get it later. Teaching to it as a worm is really, really valuable. And that, Bronte, I'm not sure we've got that built into today.
Oh, okay, that's okay. I'll look it up. I was just intrigued by how that differed to this kind of polling.
Okay, so I can tell you that if you put instant feedback in what it is, I've already answered that. I've loaded the answer that I'm looking for. So when you give the answer, if this was a multi-choice and you say, I've got it, it would say, good job, we're ready to move on.
Okay, cool. Excellent. Thank you. No, that's all I needed. Yeah.
Min's just asked how long it took me to learn it. It took me literally 10 minutes in an afternoon to start playing with and working with it. And support from Socrative is very, very good. I'm part of their international community. They send out things all the time, but I literally have never had to talk to them. I don't want to sound rude, but for me, the test of a platform is, can I go and use it and be confident and never need any help. Because if I need help, it's all a bit hopeless in the middle of trying to teach. Yeah. So let me just stop sharing. So the thing is that we can pre-plan, or as we said, or load in advance. So I'm going to hand back to Janis, and she's going to talk about some tips and tricks before we get you actually doing some work.
Okay, so let me now just try this again. So we'll share this. Beautiful. Did that share? Yep, excellent. So just a few little tips and tricks. So as Lynn's already mentioned, we definitely when we're working online, we've found that moving and using polls or these feedback mechanisms and moving beyond just testing content knowledge. So what we sort of, when we used to use polling and we were using Socrative, I think I'm right, Lynn, we were using Socrative before we moved online. But very much that was, we use them for testing, have students got this concept? So, we'd run a multiple choice on a concept or theory that we'd just spoken about in class. Students would log in and, and it was like an instantaneous quiz. Have they got it or not? What we've found is that with online, because we don't have the nonverbal cues from students, it's harder to read the mood of the classroom. We've then incorporated these questions about, so how do you think you've got this concept, or how are you feeling today? What's going on for you today? And that gives us then some of the insight that we'd lost from that lack of, being physically in the same room together. So we'd really encourage going beyond thinking about polling and interactive tools, beyond just testing sort of knowledge acquisition. We can do that in other ways. And we still do, we may have a poll at some point during a class that, one of the weeks we talk about Kohlberg's stages of moral development. And so we've always traditionally run a quiz there. We run the scenario and say, what would be your answer? And so we still do that, but we've extended the use of our polls. Lynn's already mentioned, so particularly when we're trying to connect with that student on the interpersonal level, use language that students are going to respond to, that talks to them in their own language. We definitely believe in keeping the students doing something in the class. So as I mentioned up front, I'm sure we've all had that experience of, even a small class of 25, most people have their cameras off. You don't really know whether the student is there or not there. Have they gone off to get a cup of coffee? Are they watching YouTube videos, things like that? And so what we find is that it's really important to keep the students doing something. And you've experienced, Lynn's a master at this, and you've experienced this morning. So, we aim at around, 8 to 10 minutes of us talking and then having students do something, or encouraging them to respond in the chat function, or we'd run a poll. So we're not running a poll every 10 minutes in class, but we are posing questions and asking them to jump into the chat function to do this, or send us an emoji, and what we're really doing there is constantly trying to draw their attention back to what's going on in the classroom, rather than them being distracted by YouTube or whatever else is going on around them. And then, as we've said, it definitely, by having that interactivity and talking to that interactivity. So as Lynn has also demonstrated today, we constantly talk about, oh, I can see there's, oh, we've got half the class. Can we get more people over the line? What's happening for you? Encouraging them to participate and talking to what we're seeing come back to us in terms of that feedback. definitely does remove the need for us to have these cameras on to really get that interactivity. And then Lynn has this lovely lovely phrase about popcorn rules. And so popcorn rules are, I guess, two things. If you're running a poll, sort of try and encourage students to answer in the length of time it would take for a bag of popcorn to pop in the microwave, right? So you want these to be short and sharp. You want them to, because again, that's another measure of, are they actually paying attention to you, or are they off doing something else? And then it's like, oh, hang on a minute, there's a poll happening, right? And I need to jump in. So we talk about the speed of that. And also what we see, just like with popcorn, you'll get a really big flourish of responses very quickly. Just like with popcorn, you put a bag in, you know, there's a little lag, and then, you know, the bag explodes and there's lots of popping, and you'll see lots of that. And then it tails off. And what you can do with your poll is, because we're talking to the responses, we're talking to what we're seeing, you can often maybe get a second wave. So by encouraging students, oh, you know, let's see, you know, can we get some more students, you know, or we're only getting about half, you know, what does everybody else think, that type of thing, and see if you can get a few more responses come through. But keeping it short and sharp, and high energy. So it's, I can't encourage you enough to, when you are running a poll, don't run the poll and keep things silent. But at the same time, as Lynn was saying, like with Kahoot, you get that crazy music going on. That's just annoying and distracting. It's about us not staying quiet. So it's about us, you know, maintaining that energy, talking to what we're seeing while this is going on. Lynn, have you got any other tips that have come to mind?
I think that the other thing I do is I continue to teach based on the worm. So if I'm seeing one or two people say that they're lost, I might go back over where they, like what I've just done, or I might say, so what we're talking about here is just a reminder is, you know, so if that question, how is everybody feeling today? You know, I'll say, oh, you know, tell me, because, you know, if I don't know how you're feeling, I might be running a really fast-paced class while you're feeling really sleepy. Or, you know, you might need something and I don't know about it because I can't see your faces, and I don't want you to turn your cameras on. So I actually nearly discourage them from turning their cameras on and give them that real comfort factor that this is another way to talk to me. And you saw me playing with the popcorn in the chat box as Janis was talking, because I encourage them to not only do it in Socrative, but then to come back to wherever we're teaching and post an emoji. So again, they're doing something, and that keeps them in the class and doing that. So Janis, if you can just change the slide. The most important thing we do with the data is that it's not just in the class, it's after the class. This is a word cloud that I created literally 2 weeks ago. And you can see that it says that, how does our class feel? Generally good. And this was the first day. They were all high energy. It allows me to track their journey, so that as the term goes on, they might feel a little bit more tired. And I'll say, you know, I see that the energy's dropped, blah, blah, blah. It allows me to reach out, as I said, individually to students if I think that they're lost. It also allows me to tailor the class announcements, class activities. Everything is data checked back to those points, so that we don't lose that information. And it's talking to them for what they need and giving them a voice. Most importantly is that I can, with the learner management system we use, which is Moodle, I can actually start to tailor the learning based on the questions I'm seeing. So for example, in week 1, we saw a lot of people had not looked at the assessment booklet, which has all the details in it, because they were the sorts of questions they were asking. So I hijacked the Moodle, which meant when they logged on, they got a message from me by name. It said, "Hi, Sarah. So glad that, you've logged on, and we're really making sure this week that you know exactly what's required to be successful in this class. When you close this window, you'll be taken to the assessment booklet. So as Sarah presses close, she's taken straight to the assessment booklet. After that, it's up to her, but I've really given every student the best opportunity. Now, if Sarah had already looked at it, the back end data will have known that, and she won't get the message, nor will she be taken there. So we're really doing data driven to engage our students. I'm conscious of time, and I know we want to get you doing some talking and some chatting, but they're the really important things that we take from this data. And just one of the questions that Min asked about the different demographics, I have used this with everybody from undergrad straight out of school all the way through to my tutors and tutor training, or our tutors and tutor training. Sorry, Janis owns the tutors as much as I do, more than I do. I've used it also in professional workshops like this. We did a workshop where we just used it as an engagement tool rather than teaching it. And as a result of it, some of our colleagues picked it up and are now using it to teach in work integrated learning. And what I find is once people have actually used it, they really want to use it. Definitely works for culturally and linguistically diverse students, Min, because they've got time to type. They can type in their native language and native tongue and then convert and put it in it, and because they're working on a computer platform. So it really gives students a very equal voice, provided they have access to some sort of technology and the internet. And because we're teaching online, it's safe for us to assume that every student we've got right now has got that access to a device and internet. That's the only two things they need. Once they've got that, everything else is clear. And I find that whether they're using voice to text, so if they have a need to use voice to text or to translate, etc., they can do all of that and then just pop it in the chat boxes. So, Janis.
Lovely. Thanks, Lynn. So what we thought we might do is just quickly break out into some breakout rooms, which is a chance for you guys to share in small groups, I guess, what types of engagement activities you've been using in this online space, and also have a think about how you might use Socrative. You may have experience of this or another platform. So how do you see you could use this either in terms of just that classroom engagement piece, or maybe think about how you might take advantage of some of the opportunities that the data presents, and to think about that student engagement piece. I'm just looking at the time, so it's now about 9:13, so we'll say about 5 minutes. Sorry, we'll have to keep it short and sweet, maybe 7 minutes. So we'll be back at 20 past the hour here. So let's break out for 7 minutes, and then we'll bring everyone back and hear some of your thoughts and ideas as well. So,
Janis, I have a question.
Yes, Peter.
So if you use this platform, how long does the responses stay? Like till you delete it, or it stays for one semester? How is there a duration?
I think the responses are always there, but that's definitely something we should check with Lynn, because to be honest, I've never gone back into the platform to look for data from a previous term type of thing. It's very much, I would be only looking at this term. So I'll see if we can see if Lynn's actually, if she's got an idea of how that works. But yeah, I mean, they're there. The data resides as, if I've needed to go back within a term, so within a 10-week period, it's always been there. So yeah. Let's see, where is...
Sorry, I was muted. It's there in perpetuity. So I can go back and get data from 3 or 4, years ago, if I wanted it. Even if I delete the room, the data stays. It just remembers that, that's where it has. So so that's sort of good. So Jennifer, I've not had students lead with Socrative. If the students have wanted to use Socrative, I've set it up for them, and then they can lead the program as part of the tutorial or workshop. But again, I've done it that way rather than them doing it, because I want to A, know where the data is, and B, be able to watch what's going on. So if a student is, it's like if I'm going to get them to run a workshop, I'll often say, send me the stuff and we'll create your room for you, because again, it just means that we understand what's going on. It's not off on a different platform, because a lot of our students might choose like WeChat, for example, and that would be fine if you're in China, but not okay if you're in India or Australia. So hopefully that helped.
Lovely. Thank you. So I quickly made a note of someone in each of the different breakout rooms. But I think it would just be interesting to have some quick feedback about the conversation, or some ideas maybe of, did anyone have come up with a brilliant idea of how they might use it, or experiences, whether good or bad, of what they've been doing? So we had 4 breakout rooms, and I just made a note of, we had a room that had Kevin in it, one that had Diana in it, one Sarah was in one of them, and Peter was in another. So was there anything, and it doesn't have to be those people, but were there any stories or ideas that you'd like to share?
I mean, I can go. What we shared was we use different other platforms. So like we use Kahoot, or we used Blackboard Collaborate or Zoom itself for the live lectures as well as talking, because it does have polling and everything inbuilt. But then we found that if the university agrees, and if there are like more people to use that, it can be a good source for having a quick poll or like a quick quiz kind of thing, where you can link it with the Blackboard. And we can say that, let's say after every 3 weeks, we'll have a quick quiz, and we can use that platform so that every student can prepare. So that can be a good way to use this platform.
Excellent. Excellent. Some other ideas or experiences, good or bad?
I've been using Padlet, and I found it quite useful, but this looks even more fun.
Yeah, I think over the years, I'm sure many of us have used and tried lots of different, options. Lynn, Lynn has lots of experience with lots of different platforms, many more than I do, that's for sure.
So it's interesting, Janis, I was in the conversation this morning about Miro and Mural, and Padlet is very like that. And I've just done a thing for Advanced HE on Padlet. Padlet is great as a visual capture. It's so for me, Padlet is like a Prezi on steroids. I can just keep building. What this gives me is a moment in time, a snapshot in time. And I think I'm going to sound like a control freak now, and I'm not. But what it does is it gives me control of what's going on with the classroom. And just like if I was in front of a classroom and I said, how are we going? Or I'd go, everybody's faces are down, scrolling, goodness forbid, it would tell me it's time to mix it up. So by using Socrative, I can, how quickly they're answering, what they're answering tells me, what they're doing in the confines of their bedrooms.
I think just to, I'm very conscious of time. I think to wrap it up, there's a couple of key messages, obviously. So hopefully Lynn and I have introduced you to the ideas, or to the world of Socrative, and what we see as the benefits, which is particularly that data piece that we can then use after class to which is where we feel the strengths are. So we can then have those targeted messaging with students to follow up, and so that students, again, it's about building those connections when we are so dislocated and spread around the world. I think though, and we've seen particularly in the chat function, that a lot of us are using a lot of different tools, and I think fundamentally that's really important and really great. You know, and that talks to some of those tips and hints that Lynn and I were also talking about, which is about keeping our students engaged. Don't be so overly concerned with the wall of black without cameras on, because there are different ways that we can measure and monitor and engage our students, even if they're not sharing, you know, sharing their screens on type of thing. So it's about how do we fundamentally, what we want is to try and keep our students engaged in learning. We want to make sure that if they're going to be with us for that 2 hours a week, that they're actually there, that they're present, that they're with us on that journey. They're not just logged in because they feel they need to be logged in, but they're off doing something else. We want them to maximize and make the most of that time that we're together. And so in some ways, whatever the functionality that we're using, whether it's polling tools, whether it's actively encouraging students to use chat functions, it is about that engagement piece. And that's really, you know, for us, one of the most important things about students. It's not about just logging in and having us drone on for 2 hours. It's about, we want our students, we expect our students to fundamentally be agents of their own learning, and so therefore do need to be active. So I've just put up here, the coloring is not so great on this slide, Lynn, but our email addresses are both on this slide. Feel free to reach out. Lynn and I can talk for hours on issues of student engagement in online learning. And if you've got specific questions about Socrative, let us know. Let us know if you take the opportunity and jump in and, you know, download the free trial of the software and use it in your classrooms too. We'd love to hear. We'd love to hear how it's going. Oh, and Lynn also, thank you, Lynn. She's shared our emails in the chat function as well. So thank you, everyone. And have a lovely evening or the rest of the day, or, you know, wherever you are located. Stay well and stay safe. Thanks, everyone.
You as well.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.